Hey everybody and welcome. Today we're going to make abstract paintings, and that's a fun exercise whenever you are maybe a little bit stuck and you don't want to create an art journal page and you don't want to draw or whatever. Let's just make some abstract backgrounds. I also often use this technique in my bigger sketchbook. And then from these abstracts, I'm drawing landscapes, and sometimes I just do some abstract paintings. I did that technique already with my members a few weeks ago, and we made some lovely abstract paintings. And today I decided to do something similar with a little bit of another color palette, and I'm also starting the abstracts with some stamping just to bring some pattern or some images onto my background, which I don't want to have them showing through. Well, they might show through and that's just fine, but I don't plan anything. I just put this onto my page to maybe then have a surprise with them, because I like that they are popping up on the background, or they are just a little bit visible on the background. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just creating some kind of imagery. I'm using a big sheet of watercolor paper. That's it's not very textured, but it's also not a hot press paper. It's more a cold press paper with a fine grain. And it measures, I think, 30 by 40 centimeters. It's quite big, and I had to put up my camera quite high. That's why I'm coming into the screen sometimes, because it's not small. And I have taped that paper down into 4 sections, so I get 4 smaller paintings later in the process. I'm using permanent inks, so they are not water soluble. Once they are dry, well, they dry quite quickly, and I don't want to bleed them into the paint layers I put over the top. My color palette, I don't know how I picked that, because it's been a while that I've recorded that video, but usually I flip through my art journals, and if I like a color palette from a spread, then I would just use this as inspiration. The stamps I'm using are from our Pencil Marks number 8 stamp set. I only picked that one. I don't want to pull out tons of different images, and I just used that stamp set to add something to the background. In my next step, I did some scribbling with a water-soluble pencil over the top. I think I picked a Derwent Inktense or a few Derwent Inktense in different colors that are going with the colors I have here on my page. And sometimes I just close my eyes, and I'm holding my pencil at the very end to keep it loose. And then I close my eyes sometimes and let it drag over the page. Sometimes I have a look what I'm doing, but I try not to think about. I try not to control. Sometimes I'm using my left hand for that. These are all techniques to stay loose. It's now time to go in with some inks, and I'm picking watercolor inks today. These are the Aquadrops from Schmincke. You can use acrylic inks, you can use normal watercolor, you can use some refills for markers, for example. Just some color that you put down onto the page. It's a great project to experiment with your materials. For example, you have some materials you never use, or you have some new materials, and that's a great project to work with them. I'm also using just a little bit of water to blend some of the Derwent Inktense pencils onto the paper. Of course, if you don't have any inks, you could just lay down more Derwent Inktense and blend these with water onto your page. I'm making some more marks. I think that could be the Stabilo all pencil in black, and I'm dragging the pencil through the wet areas, which gives me some really interesting marks. Of course, you could use another color for that. Yeah, it's just intuitive playing. I do not plan anything. I have no idea how these are turning out. Sometimes there are paintings that are not nice in the end and I don't like them. Then you could always use that background paper you have and use it, for example, for die cutting, and then use these pieces as ephemera pieces for your journals. I have also a video where I'm sharing a lovely way how you can use a watercolor painting that you don't like and make something else out of it. I don't know. I hope I can find that, link that video up. It's quite an old one, but I think it was quite a nice way of using old paintings you don't like. I now pulled out my Daniel Smith watercolor sticks. Of course, just use normal watercolors. You don't need to have these. I just had them laying on my desk because I use them a lot in my sketchbook and I love them for location drawing when we are on holidays or when I go out, because they are not they do not melt in the sun or something like that, and also if you drop them down they usually do not break immediately, and that's what I really love about them, and they are very versatile, especially when you are out on location. And I think I have the quinacridone orange here, or gold, I don't know, and I'm just adding that color. I really love a complementary color scheme, so that's why I picked that orangish color together with the blue tones, and I also know that this is mixing quite nicely with the blue into an olivey, yeah, more natural grungy green. Here I'm also picking an orangish color. It's the Rusty Hinge from the Distress crayons, and I just scribble them over some areas. You can use Neocolors, do something similar, or the Faber-Castell Gelatos. And again, you could just use some normal watercolor or some paint. Instead, I just grabbed things that were around me, and that's what I recommend doing. Get out your art supplies and just throw them onto the paper. And that's also, it's not only that you're creating something, it's all about the process. For me, whenever I sketch or draw or paint or do something like that, I have to enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, I don't do it. That's why I stopped doing traditional watercolor painting. I love the finished paintings. They look so beautiful, and the usual normal watercolor painting that you see, it's beautiful, the flowers, whatever. But I never enjoyed the process of painting just with watercolor, creating a landscape, a flower bouquet, whatever, taking care of the layers of of the white space, all these things. I never enjoyed that. I didn't have fun creating it. And then I don't feel any sense in doing it. And since I enjoy even more what I'm doing, I stopped thinking about the finished product. I always just did it because of the process. And in the end, often things turn out fine. It does not happen a lot that the result is very ugly or that I can't use it. I've used some paint here. It's the vinyl paint from Le Franc Bourgeois, the flash paints, and they are similar to acrylic gouache because they dry completely matte and flat, perfect for a sketchbook. You can use acrylic paint instead, and I just slopped that onto the painting, and I used Payne's Gray, and here I'm using the ivory color with a fern brush. That's also a really nice way of changing the marks you make by just switching to another brush, sometimes something special like that fern brush. And as everything was so dark, I decided to add in that light color a bit. It's a complete mess on my paper, and at this stage I thought, oh, maybe these are going to turn out all ugly and I cannot use them. But often when you then reveal the tape around, you get a completely different look. Yeah. I switched again. I think I played on this over the whole day, and as the lighting turned down a bit, might be at night, I wanted to add in a little bit more color. I let the paints dry, obviously, and I'm just layering some watercolor over the top here. And I really like the transparency of watercolors and that you can layer them up and get that show through effect. I think that's quite nice. And I picked kind of a reddish color. I think that must be the carmine or alizarin crimson. I don't know exactly because I don't have in mind which colors I have. I don't add a lot of this, just some accents here and there. I'm now going to remove my tape, and I'm using my heat tool to just heat that up so it lifts easily from the page and it does not tear your paper. We will now work on each image separately and try to finish that up. For the right one at the bottom, I have picked a focal point, and that's one of our Sketch Leaf number 5 stenciled images. And there is a video tutorial available how I make these collage for the images. I love them for my art journaling, for card making, and they are really easy to make from your own jelly prints or just on some pattern paper. Here I decided to draw in with a Posca marker and give the leaf some veins in white because I really like the red and white combo on this image, and I thought it matches the background perfectly. We are now coming to my favorite part, some mark making with Neocolors. I love doing that, it's so relaxing, and I just pick colors that are already on the paper, on the background. I would not pick any new colors to add to it because it's already quite busy, and I also usually like when everything stays a little bit cohesive color-wise. And what I also do with the Neocolor is when I have some areas I don't like, I can cover up them with a layer of Neocolor because these crayons are quite opaque. I try just to make different patterns with the crayons. And with the white, I try to cover up some parts. Because of that fern brush, I have some really light strokes within color, and I go over some of these areas to just cover them up with white and to lighten up that ivory color a little bit. I'm doing the same process to all of these paintings now. I just add more color and marks with either Posca pens or Neocolors. I will do some botanical line drawing, and I will also finish up the left side or the left painting here in the video, but the video was very long and the process just takes a while to be finished, so I will post the other two images over on our blog or at the end of the videos. I have to say that one of the other images I did not really like, and I wasn't sure what to do with it, and I just then made a negative space image out of it, which I'm not a big fan of, but that's just something you could do if you don't have an idea what else you could do with a busy background. I'm still working on that right one, and that's where you can see that the time it takes is more that finishing up part than the start of the paintings. And it's a very relaxing process. I don't want to hurry. I just want to have a look, adjust my eyes and see what I want to get rid of, what I want to emphasize maybe a bit, and yeah. I'm now working on the left painting. I decided to draw a botanical image just with a fine Posca liner, and I have a blue one here. Not sure which blue that is. Might be just the blue, dark blue, or just blue. I don't know. And yeah, I just do this without any reference. And I also do not pre-draw these kind of images because I really like it, like just to put it down and not to think about, because sometimes when you think about too much, it will look a bit odd maybe. But of course you can pre-draw it if you feel not safe, and then go over with the permanent marker. And now I'm going in with the Neocolors, cover things up, make some marks maybe. You could also use oil pastels instead of the Neocolors. They would give you even better coverage. I just did not think about that because I have a lot of oil pastels, but I did not think about using them here. But of course, that's something you could use them for. I know some of us have a lot of supplies that you never use then. And I think oil pastels might be something you have and you don't use, because that's what I am or was doing. I don't know. I loved oil pastels because of their softness, their creaminess. They are so opaque. And then when you use them in your art journal, you close the pages, everything will stick to the other page and they will never dry, and that's kind of annoying. And I personally use oil pastels in my sketchbook sometimes, and then I lay a piece of paper in between the pages. And usually I do not use them purely. I always use them just as a top layer for a drawing. And what I also like to use them for some loose botanical line drawing. I do that quite a lot in the garden. And these are just loose sheets of paper. And I use the oil pastels there because they are so big and chunky and you can't do any details, and that's what I love doing. Here I picked a pink crayon from the Neocolors, which has a similar color as the pink that's on the page, on the painting. And I just highlight that rainbow that's peeking through from the background a little bit. That's what I meant in the beginning with the stamping. You never know where it pops up through. You can see some of the patterns in the leaf images through the paint. And here that rainbow comes up, and I really like that, and that's why I highlighted it a little bit with that crayon. Sometimes I can't stop, but I was missing some more white highlights in between now, and I'm just making some dot marks with a bigger Posca paint pen in white. I will now glue down the image on the right side just with some craft glue. And as we are under half an hour, I decided not to skip the other paintings, but I will do a speed up version of the other two. For the others, I decided to just turn around my paper pad because I liked how they were looking when I turned it upside down, and so I worked on those. And here I'm doing the same. I'm going in with Neocolors. I highlight stuff I like. I cover up things I don't like. And I'm happy with the right painting because I think that has quite a nice look. But the left was quite a hard, and that's where I just covered everything up with a white marker and made a negative space botanical image. Yeah. For this one, I let the marker dry, and once it was dry, I went over the top with another layer of the white marker, and to finish it up, I added a little bit of Neocolor into the leaf to cover up everything else that was white. And here you can see my finished paintings for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you are inspired a little bit to create your own. And I hope we will see us next time. Bye!